How are you?
Yeah, staying busy. I'm actually getting ready to go to Africa here in a couple of months or in a couple of weeks actually now. It was a couple months for a while, now it's a couple of weeks. We're getting close. So,
Really? So, okay,
yeah,
I have a bajillion questions to ask you.
absolutely.
But maybe we will get into this. Is this Africa for work? Is this Africa with family? Is this
Work.
like
It's work
work?
related, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, cool. Okay, very basic. So, because I don't know anything about you. Where are you in Georgia?
I'm in Delaware now. So,
Delaware.
uh
Whoa, what? You're
yes,
so
I had
close.
I had just moved to Delaware before the wedding.
Oh.
So, So I'm Mike Schaefer, and I met Vanessa at a mutual friend's wedding, David, down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's it.
Yeah.
And that is the extent of all of our communications, minus me randomly emailing you. Um, and the premise of this is having conversations and honoring like I don't want to say regular people because it's again sort of like reinstating a power hierarchy that I'm trying to get away from, but it's like I am very interested I really like my friends to start
Yeah,
off with. And this kind of started with wanting to shine a light on people in my life who I think are awesome and just talking to people about choices they've made in their life. Because so
sure.
much of what we see is like celebrities and experts and blah, blah, blah. And most of those people I have at least had coffee with, or like I know them a little more. And you for
Yeah,
sure are the person I know the least,
sure.
hugely.
Cool.
So yeah, so you're definitely my most strange stranger, which is very exciting to me. And you also might be sorry, I also have a throat thing.
You're fine.
Someone who is in my judgmental bias brain maybe the most different from me and from my community of like, let's say, oh my God, I have rodents in my throat right now. Art people or school
Okay,
people or
sure.
something like that. So that's very exciting to me because we met and I was like, this guy's just great. Like, so I like that we are conversing and getting to know each other. And also, I don't have any, like, I do have assumptions about you. And then I
Sure.
also realize I have no idea what they are. So in some ways, it's like forcing me out of a comfort zone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So I like that. Okay, so the question is, um, like I know you work in oh actually wait, pause that. I'm gonna edit all of my rambling. I would like to know how you got to that wedding, because that's part of why I was most interested in
Yeah.
you. I just it's so cool. So
So it is a very funny and interesting. It's very like it's a very modern story, like the very 21st century. Um, so during COVID, everybody got kind of forced into interactions in a different way than we've ever been before. And the, I don't know, the drive for community didn't diminish at all, but you couldn't go out and have beers with the boys or go down the street to visit grandma anymore. So, um, being a, millennial child, I started playing video games a little bit more often. And, uh, I think Dave and I ended up in several consecutive games, and
what video game?
it's called League of Legends. So
Okay.
it's a you play one character and you're on a map trying to you have teammates and an enemy team and you're trying to defeat each other, basically work together and defeat
Okay.
them.
Okay.
That's a very very wave top summary of the game, but
Okay.
we ended up in like one or two games back to back together, which is kind of unusual. It's very randomized, and so um, you can like you can friend people after one game together if you like the way they play or you like their personality or whatever. And Dave and I kind of have a lot of similarities in personality. I'm in the military, so I have like a lot of dry, kind of dark humor, and
Okay.
and
That's a
Dave
thing.
and
Okay.
Dave is yeah, I mean it's like a stereotype, but it's true. Um, and Dave is also like that. And so um
Because he's in finance and maybe there's some
maybe,
darkness
yeah,
to
maybe
the
he's in
aspects of the
Florida.
world. Yeah, he's in
Florida
Florida.
has some of that too, you
Yeah.
know. Actually,
Yeah.
he was in New York at the time though. He was still
Mm,
living in New York at the time.
same.
So yeah, there's also some of that too.
Hmm.
He just has a very like comedic way of looking at the world, and
Yeah.
it was very like I don't I'll acknowledge that there's there's bad things in the world, but I'll do it in a mocking kind of way. And that's
Hmm.
very similar to how a lot of the military is as well. Because we get put in like weird, awkward, uncomfortable situations like professionally on a regular basis. And so we don't do much except like, hey, this sucks, so let's make jokes about it kind of thing. But that's kind of that we kind of vibed
Yeah.
on that wavelength, and then we added each other just to play a few more games together, and then it kind of like over we probably we probably were on and off like playing 3 or 4 days a week during COVID because it was just there just wasn't anything to do outside of the house, you know. So and I have a family, and he was actually about to start trying to move back from New York to Florida.
Okay. So he
Uh,
was, yeah, also a bit dark. Yeah.
yeah, so he had some stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so we were just, you know, talking, and we didn't really even talk about personal lives at first, aside from like where we were, because he was Eastern time zone, I was West Coast. So, uh,
So
and then
you would be playing and then some conversation would happen.
right, so
Yeah.
there's an app called Discord. It's
Oh
similar to
yeah, I
Zoom.
know.
It's similar to Zoom, yeah. So we would just get on Discord and talk over Discord in between, like during games, but then like there's lag time in between games, like when you finish one just before you start another. So we would just like kind of BS in between, just talking about what we thought was
Yeah.
funny or sports we liked, you know, inconsequential details. And then like slowly kind of parsed out a little bit, like as we got kind of more comfortable with each other. And um like we did a couple of like a couple of mutual friends would like turn on video cameras and talk like during games and stuff, and so we joined in a couple of those. And uh, um yeah,
So
just
you
started.
saw each other's faces beyond
Yeah,
your
exactly.
avatar
Yeah,
characters? Okay.
yeah. And so there's not even avatar characters in the game. It's just a username. So
Oh, so yeah, because I was gonna ask like what you looked like. Okay, so there's no
yeah,
like person.
nope.
Okay.
There's no person. You
Boring.
do pick a
Okay.
character, but you can pick a different character every single game. There's like a
Okay.
hundred and something characters. So
Okay.
yeah. So there's no like avatar. There's nothing except your username, which you know his was hilarious. But
Okay, maybe it's okay. We'll say that.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So over the course of about a year, 2 years, we kind of just it slowly became a very very organic kind of friendship, and we started like talking about our other like our actual like my wife and my kids. And I learned about his ex and all the like the drama that happened with his previous relationship where he almost got married. Uh and then it
Didn't.
kind of like I was talking to him when he started dating Carolina. And then the wedding happened probably because I made the first like I don't know foray into like physical like in-person friendship. There was a world championship for the video game that we like. They have a world championship every year, kind of like the World Cup. And they break it up by region. So there's a lot of Asian people that play League of Legends. So
Yeah.
They have a Chinese region, a Korean region, a North American region, and a European region. Those are the four big regions in the
Okay.
world. And they cycle who hosts the World Cup for that. It's the World Championships. Who hosts that every single year?
Okay.
So 20 was it 2022? The years kind of get fuzzy in the back of my mind a little bit, but I think it was 2022 or 2023. Um, North America hosted the World Championships, and the semifinals round was in Atlanta. and I lived in Atlanta. And I was like,
How could you not?
I have never been to anything like this in person. I never probably will again. I'm gonna go. Dave was like on the game with me, and I was just like, yo, I'm going to this thing. And he's like, what is it? And I was like, it was like a sporting event. And he's like, yeah, I'll come. Just like kind of thing. And I was like, cool. And then he was like looking for trying to get arrangements, and it was like he was having some trouble with um like figuring out where he wanted to stay. And I was like,
Okay.
just stay. I just invited him to stay at my house. So, yep. And that was he had just started
Cuties.
dating. He had just started dating Caro at the time, and so she was like amused, but like nervously amused
Yeah.
because she's like, you know him from what?
Yeah. Yeah.
But like my kids had been on video calls with him already and like knew who he was kind of. Um, and so like I don't know, I just felt comfortable enough with him. Plus Dave's short, so I felt like I could take him if something really
Okay,
bad.
okay. So that was like your kids could surround him and like take him down in a
Yeah, yeah,
that
so whatever.
and
But
was
yeah, that was it. That was
yeah.
the genesis of the like in person friendship, and then yeah, like not long after that, they got engaged, and he just kind of floated the question if I'd be interested in coming, and I was like, yeah, I'll come.
All right, so there's a few directions to go in, but I would like to ask you about how you got to where you are. I am very fascinated by how people tell that story, the things that sort of like mark them, that make them end up where they are.
Sure.
So, I know you're in the military. Now you're in Delaware. So I know you've moved around. I also know you were in college and you had a good group of friends and you smoke a pipe, maybe, maybe not, anymore. And
Let's
that was
do
a
it.
whole
I do,
thing
yeah.
we talked about. Is it there?
I do. It's in my bag over there, though.
Okay.
I have to go get it.
Um, so I guess I'd like to know kind of how you ended up where you are, and then we can talk a little more about like what you do, but like how you got there and why, and yeah, and then I go
Sure.
more.
Yeah, I think for anybody that's like not in the military, the place I kind of start with is like a foundational thing for me. I grew up in the military. Like my parents were
Okay.
both in the Air Force.
Okay.
And so that really was like the genesis of my understanding of that lifestyle. And that was where I moved around. I was born in Louisiana. And then I lived in Nebraska, Virginia, North Carolina, and then Virginia again before I graduated. I did all that before I was in middle school.
Oh
So
wow.
um, I kind of fortunate in some respects. Like I was able once I got to that fifth grade was the last time I moved, and I was in the same area from fifth grade until I joined the military. So I went to college in Richmond, Virginia for 2 years and stuff. But aside from that, like I lived in Hampton Roads area, Virginia for 10 plus years as a kid. And so that's pretty much what I call home. Um, but I still was part and parcel with the military lifestyle. Parents going on TDYs or that's temporary duties or deployments and being gone for not crazy amounts of time, but I think my mom the longest she was gone was like 6 months, and my dad was gone for 5 at one point. So um, I grew up in that lifestyle, and then ironically, my dad was really like anti me doing the military, and just because he had a bad experience, he did not enjoy his interactions with his superiors, and you have a rating system, and he got what he felt like was an unfair rating or unjust rating at one point in his career, and so he was very, you need to be a lawyer or a doctor or something in computers because he could see the direction technology was going.
That's yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay. So I kind of went to college I was torn between political science and computer science. Those are the kind of the two directions that I was kind of leaning initially. And I went there I did 2 years at VCU in Richmond, Virginia, um, which you were talking about your friends, like your friend group being kind of more artsy. And it made me laugh because that's what VCU was. It was basically it's an art school, and then there's an engineering and a medical school attached to it, So um, I just have a lot of time interacting with all kinds of varied people in
Yeah.
my life, I guess.
Hmm.
But I went there for 2 years. I didn't really like it. I didn't like um, I didn't like the way that the political I opted for political science was what I landed on, and I didn't care for the way the school ran their program. It was just very like every professor was pretty much allowed to inflect bias into their teaching, and it
Hmm.
kind of soured me either way, like right wing, left wing. I was fairly politically moderate. Going like my whole life, I've been fairly middle of the road on a lot of issues.
Hmm.
Um, and I did not like being in a situation where a professor could literally create like gang culture in a classroom.
Hmm.
And so I just was like, all right, well, this is really uncomfortable when it's like I had two classes that kind of sold me on bailing on poli sci. Excuse me.
Yeah.
One was a public policy class, which was very small, and the professor was a prior mayor of the city of Richmond, and he was very left wing, and he literally, I would say as a whole, the school was pretty fairly left wing or
Hmm.
fairly I don't know. I hate to do political stuff here, but it was fairly like liberal as a school
Yeah.
because of the arts program and everything, and I get that. That's cool. But there were 14 of us in the class, and only two of us were like on the first day survey didn't put down like what is it, Democrat.
Yeah.
I'm an independent. I don't give a shit. I don't really
Hmm.
care.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I was like, one, me and this other girl put down independent on this survey, and so every debate in the class was 12 students who all put liberal versus two students who put independent. It was the year Obama got elected.
Fun. And so wait,
And
it
so
was
he
it debate structured? Was that like the structure of your class where there would be like debating
correct
issues?
because
Okay.
it was public policy. And
Okay.
so
Okay.
yeah, like that soured me really quickly because every class was all right. Well, Mike and Ashley are going to defend John McCain, and the other 12 of you can all defend Obama. And
Uh-huh.
it was like an unfair fight every class. I was fighting
Yeah.
six people, and she was fighting six people. So it was
Yeah.
like I was pretty disappointed in that class. And then I had another class that went the opposite way,
Hmm.
where I had it was fairly like um the instructor was fairly conservative,
Conservative, yeah.
and I also put independent again, and it was the same thing but reversed. And I was like, well, this is like I feel like no matter what, if I finish this degree, I'm going to spend the next 2 years like getting
Yeah.
gangbustered no matter what
Yeah.
I do. And
Yeah.
I also wasn't sold on law school to begin with anyway, so I opted to just like I did after my second year, I just kind of came back and started community college just to like get
Hmm.
some other courses that I didn't, and then I joined. Then I met my wife and joined the military out of that. So my dad
Yeah.
was he had two jobs that were fairly cool within his career. And one was he was a WIZZO, which is a weapons system officer
A
on
WIZZO.
a bomber. Yeah, WIZZO.
I don't know what that means.
It's a weapons system officer. So
Yeah, but
literally,
on a bomber is that's a plane.
yeah. So
Okay.
on a plane that drops bombs, he is
Okay.
the guy that controls the actual bombs. So like
Okay.
there's a pilot flying, and he's flying where he needs to go, and he's focused on everything that goes with flying a plane. And
The
then
piloting.
the pilot is doing that, and then
Okay,
my dad
yeah.
is sitting at a computer in the back of the plane, like telling the plane when to drop a bomb if there's like
The need to drop a bomb.
a
A
target or
target.
whatever.
Yeah.
So that was his first job, which is kind of cool.
And
Um,
he does not, do you need piloting experience to do that?
No, you go to a flight school, like you go to the initial flight training, you get like your basic private pilot's license, and then they kind of like disperse all of them, all the aviators. Some become they call them navigators or
Okay.
WIZZOs. So you become that kind of job, and then you don't do any more flying training. You instead go to like system training, and you like learn how to
Okay.
run a system on a plane.
Yeah.
But all of them get like basic. Here's like you want to be an aviator in the Air Force as an officer, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Um, So he did that, which is cool, but I didn't remember him doing that at all because the last time he did that, I was like a year and a half old, and then he
Was
did
that
like
was that his first
that
thing
was
that
his
he
first
that was
thing
his
he
first?
did in
Okay.
the Air Force. Yeah,
Okay.
so he did that for like a decade, and then he had me, close to the end of that time frame, and then a lot of reasons, but he ended up doing something different, more like staff, kind of administrative positions mostly, and leadership stuff, as he was getting further along in his career. And so and then he got a very unique job where he did, it's at the time it was called ALO. It's an air liaison officer. Basically, he was an officer who would go with special forces units or army units, and they would be like the guys on the ground who would talk to the airplanes if they needed help, like if they were under fire and they needed some close air support or something like that, or needed a bomb dropped or needed a missile dropped near them on the enemy. That person on the ground helps make sure that the pilot doesn't accidentally drop the bomb on us. Does that make sense? Like he,
So so he's been up there
yep.
coordinating how to drop bombs,
And now,
coordinating dropping bombs.
because of that experience, they're like, all right, cool. Now we're going to put you on the ground with the ground units. You're gonna be in combat with them. They're like, there's gonna be dudes on that other hill over there shooting at you. And if you need air support, he's the one that would have to call in the close air support because
And he knows how to
historically,
talk to them.
correct. Yeah. If you have somebody that doesn't know how to talk to them, that's when you accidentally blow up your
Yeah.
buddies.
Yeah.
So that is the gist of his time in like, and then after that, he did that for 3 years, and then he got back into more administrative positions again. And so because of that, and because of the lifestyle and kind of his mentality anyway, he's always been like a jock, kind of push yourself as best you can kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. And you're
Um,
not like that.
I mean, I kind of wanted to be like,
All
I was
right. So
like,
that was like your,
that
mhm.
was why I picked the career I picked,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
um, I was like, I want to do something cool, but I would say I'm kind of I'm kind of like intellectually oriented. You can kind of see like I got a big old bookshelf behind me back over
Yeah.
there. I
You
like reading. I like
thinking.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so, so because of that, I picked SERE because it was more instructional based, but you still can go do cool stuff. You can still,
So what is that?
SERE is survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. And that my title is SERE specialist. So I am a specialist in those four areas
Okay, say them
for
again.
air crew. So that's survival. So I'll go through each one just so you
Yeah.
have like a full
Yeah.
list top. So survival is, I teach air crew and like other like battlefield airmen and other members of the military who are potentially going to be isolated if they have a plane that gets shot down, if they're on a ground mission and their ground mission gets isolated and they have to survive. I teach them like think like uh Bear Grylls but less cool, right? So if you know who Bear Grylls is or anything
No.
like that, okay. He ran like a show, a survival show for a long time.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if you know anybody that's into survival at all, they probably know who Bear Grylls is.
Okay.
But he was like celebritized a lot of how to survive.
I just know Alone. Josh just always has
Okay.
Alone on in the background.
Yeah.
That's
So
like what's
actually,
happening in our house.
there was a SEER guy on I think the second season of Alone, and he made it
That
all the way to the end. So he didn't win; he
that
got
makes
second
sense.
place. But yeah, yeah. So we teach them the survival stuff. We teach them how to build a shelter, how to build a fire, how to procure clean water, how to navigate everything you could imagine needing in a survival situation. We teach them that piece. The first E, I guess there's two E's. The first E is evasion, and that is if you are in enemy controlled territory, how you keep yourself hidden, how you move effectively, and how you can get back to friendly control in essence. Um, and that's the evasion piece, and that's everything from like how to avoid a dog. Like if you have a dog handler with a tracking dog chasing you, how can you defeat that obstacle? How can you avoid infrared? Everything, because technology is now
Uh-huh.
so far advanced. It's not just like you just got to run faster than the other guys now.
Yeah.
Now you have
Yeah.
like advanced
Uh-huh.
systems that you have to be able to avoid.
Uh-huh.
Um, So we teach them the evasion piece. And then the resistance piece is where most of the rumors for SERE kind of swirl around and circulate. And that is literally how you resist not just interrogation, but all exploitation. So if somebody captures you, and it doesn't even have to be military, if Vanessa goes on a trip somewhere and you for gee whiz go over to you decide, oh, Iran looks really nice right now, and you go into Iran and Iran detains you,
Yeah.
or China, you go to China and China has something kick off where they're like all of a sudden really angry at America and they start rounding
Hmm.
up American civilians, right? They're going to do that for a reason,
Hmm.
and not necessarily, it's not always malicious towards you or towards the
Hmm.
person that's being rounded up or held, but they're trying to do it for some kind of um like political leverage, right?
Hmm.
And so that's what we teach them is like, hey, you are going to have to resist interrogation if they try to get information from you. Sure, like that's, you don't want to give information that's going to be harmful to the guy standing next to you. Cool, everybody gets that. But hey, if they slap a camera in front of you and start asking you a bunch of weird questions, there's probably a reason for that. And you need to be
Hmm.
thinking about that kind of stuff. And you need to be aware of, you are not just Vanessa anymore. You are
Hmm.
now, you're an American citizen in China, right? And you are very different from all of them. And they're trying to use that to their advantage. And so that's the resistance piece, is like, okay, I'm being held for whatever the circumstances. If it's war, if it's peace, if you've been taken hostage, there's lots of different nuance to this,
Hmm.
but you don't know what they want, or maybe you do know what they want. Maybe they told you, but
Hmm.
you have to look at it analytically and be like, okay, how is this a how is this something that they could use to harm America, harm the guy that I was just serving with, or harm me? And I want to avoid that. So I'm
Hmm.
resisting. It's like all forms of exploitation. I'm resisting that.
Yeah.
And then the last E is escape, and that's pretty cut and dry. It's if your life is in danger and you don't have the ability, they're not going to give you back peacefully to America, whatever way that would look like.
Yeah.
You have a duty to try and preserve your life and escape. And so we teach them like really basic escape stuff, and that's SERE. And so we do all of that kind of bundled up into a instructional package, and we teach everybody that flies in the Air Force gets some level of SERE training.
Okay. I so many questions. I kind of
Yeah,
want to go
absolutely.
back to your dad for a second.
Sure.
Did does your dad come from a military family?
Um, Indirectly, yes.
Okay.
His dad was in the Navy in World War II.
Okay.
However, or was it World War II? Yeah, it was World War II. But um, he grew up. My dad's father was out by the time he was even born.
Okay.
So all my dad knows, my dad is from Pittsburgh, north of Pittsburgh, a little town area called Cranberry. And all my dad knows is he grew up and his dad was one of the foremen in a construction union in Pittsburgh. So he was like in and around the construction world. He has vivid memories of working in steel factories and on construction sites and stuff like that as a teenager. So that's his background. Um, and other than that, he didn't really have any like any military interactions before he joined. He didn't have a very healthy childhood. His parents split and he had some rather unsavory memories from his childhood.
Okay.
So he kind of wanted to get away
Yeah.
from that area. He wanted to leave, and so that was the military was his fastest way out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. So he learned a lot about like who he was and whatnot, like from his military training.
I wouldn't say my dad still doesn't really know much about himself. I would say
Okay.
he's not a very self-aware person.
Hmm.
Um, the military kind of became who he was for
Okay.
a while, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
uh, he was loath to let that go. And even when he's retired now, but he retired from the Air Force on a Friday, And
Okay.
on Monday, he was back at work at the same desk as a GS, like as a government service contractor, like working for the government, still doing the same exact job. He just like his job was very important and had a lot, like he had a very, like, he worked in a vault, like his stuff was like kind of important, kind of top secret, kind of whatever.
Top secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't even tell you what he does. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. So I never had a need to know. And I have the clearances now too, but like I still don't, I can't ask him, like it's just not. So because of that, he, he like, they wanted to keep him, but he hit like the maximum. He did 30 years, and you can't really do more than 30 years,
You can't.
unless you're a general, like
Okay.
generals are like the only exception to that. Or generals in like, the highest enlisted rank, which is chief master sergeant. So those are the only
Okay.
areas you can be and get over 30 years. And he wasn't either of those. So he got to 30, he retired, went home on Friday, took his flight suit off, put a business suit on Monday morning, and went back and sat at the same desk for 13 more years. So he did like 43 years basically in the military. And so it kind of was mostly his personality. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. It's so fascinating. So you now
yes.
seemingly like being able to see in like a fairly nuanced fashion your dad's like complicated relationship to the military or to
Yeah.
his life, which is really interesting. Like you
Yeah.
seem to have like a pretty firm grasp on that. Um, do you like how has that affected your relationship to it? And I guess with that, the seer position that you have and what you do, like, do you do that? Like, do you, what do you do? How much danger? Like, what's your,
Okay.
yeah, I
So
don't
let's
know.
we'll
Because
do one
there's
thing
more
at a
than
time.
that. But
We'll
yeah,
break that
go.
down into multiple
Yeah, like
questions.
there's a
So,
lot there. Yeah.
as far as my relationship with the military, um, I have developed a much more, um, how do I describe this? I would say it's a modern take on jobs in general, right? So
Hmm.
people from our generation and younger are much better now at, um, identifying that a job is a job.
Hmm.
And ultimately, I am not defined by my life in the military. I love my job. I love what I do. I don't mind being defined by having survival skills. That is a skill that I
Yeah.
like having and being able to
Yeah.
say that I have.
Yeah.
And I think that's a decent contribution to like my what I can give to somebody or contribute
Yeah.
to a situation. But being in the Air Force um is a job. It's a job that I, at the end of the day, I am signing a contract and I am getting things and I'm giving up things.
Hmm.
I'm getting slightly, I would say slightly better or more like all encompassing, not even better, but just like more all encompassing benefits. Like TRICARE covers everything. I've never gone to a hospital and been worried about if I'm in network or anything. I
Hmm.
just hand them my military ID and I'm like, stitch up my injury, or like my wife is pregnant, we need to have the baby. Like every time
Yeah.
we've gone to a
Yeah.
hospital, I'm covered, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, I give up.
Hmm.
I have limits on my free speech because of the things that I can't just like talk about stuff that I know.
Hmm.
I have limits on where I can go. I have limits on movement, right? I can, day to day, I can be like, I can take vacation and go wherever I want. But like tomorrow, if you could justify it for your work, you could probably go wherever you wanted. And for me,
Yeah.
I have to report to my duty station every day. And I have to, and then another thing I have given up is deciding where I'm going to live. I have some
Yeah.
control. Like I chose Delaware and I asked to be stationed here. But at the end of the day, the Air Force could have said, kick rocks, you're staying in Georgia, or you're going to North Dakota, or wherever they would needed me, right? So it's like there's a give and take
Yeah.
there.
And you knew that when you started? Is that very clear when you
Yes.
begin
I don't
your,
know.
yeah.
I don't know if it's very clear because
Okay.
recruiters' jobs are to downplay the
Huh.
badder things or the worst things.
Uh-huh.
But I had been around it my entire life. And
Yeah.
so um there was very little about the Air Force that surprised me once I came in. There's
Mm.
some things that I'm like, oh, this makes sense now why dad did this, or oh, I understand pieces that I didn't get before. But the overall lifestyle and the overall kind of structure made sense to me before I even joined. And that I
Okay.
think helped me with the decision and helped me prepare Emily, my wife,
Yeah.
for what was coming.
Yeah, for your life. Yeah.
But because she wasn't, her dad was in the Air Force, but like he was out, like my grandpa, he was out before she was born.
Okay.
So he only did like 6 years or something, or 4 years, and then he got out. Um, so yeah, so she had never really been around it, and so I kind of gave her like a, hey, this is what it's going to be like. This
Yeah.
is what we're going to be moving. This is our this is our third
Hmm.
house, or fourth house
In
technically. This is our
in
fourth
how
house
much
in
time?
10 years. So yeah. Um, so yeah, like that helps a lot with that. And
Yeah.
I have a very um family and myself first kind of, not like selfish mentality, but like if I don't have to be at work, I'm gonna go home.
Mm.
Like I'm not, there's a lot I have, but I think, see, part of that is too is like my job is very like, I work in an office with me and one other SERE specialist.
Hmm.
It's just two of us. And we're not like, technically I'm his boss. I am more senior in the career field. I've been doing this for 10 years and he's only been doing this for 5.5,
Hmm.
but we're the same rank. And so we're pretty much peers. And I'm more of like a more experienced buddy
Hmm.
than I am a boss. And so I don't have anybody really breathing down my neck as long, and I'm, as long as I do my job and I make sure I stay on top of my work, like I have the ability to just, hey, I'm taking a day and just like either work from home or
Yeah.
take a day off, or
Mhm.
I could, do a lot. I have a lot of freedom there that I really appreciate.
Yeah.
And not everybody in the military has that.
Yeah.
A lot of army guys are, their structure is much more rigid. Um, the Air Force as a whole is, I would say, more like a corporation than a branch of the military. We're a corporation who has planes and bombs. That's basically what I jokingly tell people about the Air
Wow.
Force.
Interesting joke. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it literally, like the way that they structure everything is very corporate-y. They have a pretty good, like, the joke in the military is the Air Force has all the best uh like the best station, the best duty stations, the best like accommodations. Like all of our junior enlisted guys have a better living situation with like what they have. Like they have their own bathroom and shower. They have their own like kitchenettes. That's not the case in a lot of barracks. You have like think like college freshman year dorms. Like you guys share like a big communal bathroom on a floor of a of a residence hall or something.
Yeah.
That's kind of what a lot of dormitories are like in the Army and the Marines.
Hmm.
Um, and so like there's some truth to that. Like it is a little bit better of a living situation in the Air Force, I would
Yeah.
say. And the working environment can be pretty um pretty like life friendly. Like if I go into work tomorrow and I'm like, hey, my kids are sick, I'm taking a day off. I don't have to take vacation necessarily. You get 30 vacation days a year, right? Everybody gets that. They can't deny you those days. But if I
Hmm.
just wanted to take a family day or a mental health day, like I can kind of do that a little bit in extra in addition to my 30 days of vacation if I'm doing everything I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
Uh, so there's that aspect, and I try to have that, back to your question. I try to keep that um, in like the forefront of my mind, as far as like at the end of the day, if I quit, like I can't quit, I'm under contract, right? But like if I quit tomorrow or if I died tomorrow, the Air
Okay.
Force would keep moving. My job would keep getting done. The mission would happen. Like everybody would continue on, right? And uh and so because of that, I try to have that pragmatic look at my work life, right? If I am the CEO of a 5 employee company and we have like, we're still fairly new and like we're building our company and I didn't show up, like I probably am in charge of some very important processes and some things that are going to like set us back for a couple of days or weeks, right? But me as in the military is like there's the organization is too big to fail. And so I try to there's a fine balance that you can kind of figure out in the military between like doing what you're told and doing what the military structure is asking of you and still prioritizing your life and your family and that kind of stuff. And so that is, I think is something that I got that my dad didn't really ever have.
Yeah.
And I kind of mm, I tried to talk I've tried to talk to him about that kind of stuff before, but he just is like he's from a different generation. He was born in 57, so um he just he's too old to change now at this point, or at least too old to want to change. That's the real truth, because you can always change.
Yeah.
um
Well, that's an understanding of humanity that not everybody shares, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But
And so and
yeah.
but
No, no, it's just very interesting because it does seem like you have like a strikingly different relationship to your job than your dad did. Just even in terms of like understanding your own identity as like pretty separate from it, which is not something that he did.
and I was fortunate too. I had a boss early on in my military career who told me something similar to that. And like I already was fairly like I was already minded to like my focus was kind of outside of work. And so I just I kind of internalized that really easily and really quickly, that it's a job. The military will still function without me. And at the end of the day, the only people that um like would I be, if I didn't show up for work, would I be letting my coworkers down? Probably. Would somebody probably die? Depends on where I'm at. Like, um, where I'm going in Africa, what I'm going to be doing there, I'm going to be the only person doing my specific job in the whole entire Horn of Africa region. So there's more responsibility attached to that job that I'm going to be doing for 6 months in Africa compared to here. Yeah. So like the day to day here in Delaware, like if I didn't show up for work and I didn't show up, if I didn't show up for work for a week, um, there are other entities they could call on. Like there's two other Air Force bases within 2 hours, and if you expand that to 3 hours, there's four Air Force bases. So um, there are resources they can use to backfill if I was a shortfall. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
there's a lot of structure built into place that is like redundancies in the military. And so I try to have that mentality, and I just like it's not worth it to me. It might be worth it to somebody else, but to me, it's not worth it to prioritize this military industrial complex and the potential that maybe I will get promoted a couple months or a year or two earlier because I stayed at work 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I had availability to come in on weekends when they needed me, that kind of stuff. Like that's just, to me, it's not worth it, because at the end of the day, my dad's out of the military. He doesn't see any of those people anymore. The only people that he has in common with that time frame, aside from maybe one or two people that he talks to on an irregular basis, is us. It's his kids, right? So like seeing that, and my parents, my parents are split up. Like they split when I
They
was in
did.
middle school.
Mine too.
Yeah. And so like seeing that whole process was, well, that is an entire other conversation. But
Yeah.
that whole process was like big bad kinds of juju.
Mhm.
Like there was a lot of fighting and a lot of really unhealthy things that came out of that and happened during that. And so like I'm seeing that, and at least part of it is, there's career decisions happening that are impacting that family dynamic. And I'm
Mhm.
not, that's definitely not the only reason they got divorced, but like,
Yeah.
uh,
For your mom and your dad?
correct. Yeah. They
Yeah.
were both active duty Air Force, so like they both had career minded directions they wanted to go. And really at the end of the day, like if you prioritize the career piece, like at the expense of your family, to
Mhm.
me, that's insanity. Like you're
Mhm.
doing this. I don't care if you do it for 20, 30 years. Theoretically, your children or your spouse are going to be with you for 50, 60 years,
Mhm.
maybe longer.
Ideally. Yeah,
Yeah,
ideally
ideally, right. Like
longer.
that's
Yeah.
the goal going into marriage. Like
Yeah.
that's the idea.
Mhm.
So for the most part, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, like that's to me is like that is it. That's the end all be all.
Mhm.
Friendships are second tier. So like I
Mhm.
only have very few like really close friends. Um and so um like that is my second priority
Yeah.
is make like all like my two or three like good friends are all fairly stable humans, so it's not like i'm
Mhm.
i'm not like
Good.
investing a ton of time and energy into them, but
Yeah,
it is a
but
concern. Like I want to make sure that if my buddy James over in Virginia has a problem, like hey, I'm taking a day because I'm going to go help him out, that kind of thing. So
yeah.
um like that is my second priority, and then
Yeah.
the military kind of falls in at, I'd say, third. Like I
Mhm.
want to promote, I want to do well at my job, I want to be successful, and I want to provide for my family, but this isn't the only way I can do that. I have other options, so I
Yeah.
would rather spend time actually knowing the personalities of my children and
Mhm.
fostering love of things that I enjoy, books,
Mhm.
spending time outside, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I can't draw for crap. Like I like the idea of drawing, but my dad never fostered it in me. My mom never fostered it in me. So I never did it growing up.
And you want to learn to draw?
Well, I mean, like I'd like to, yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, for sure.
I've watched a couple YouTube videos and
Yeah,
like
Bob
learned to
Ross,
draw
man.
specific things, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, yeah, big Bob Ross fan.
Big
But
Bob Ross.
my kiddo is 8 and
Mhm.
he is obsessed with drawing. I don't know what got him in there or whatever, but I was like,
Mhm.
well, shoot, let me foster this. Like, so we're getting him drawing
Yeah.
pads and colored pencils, and he is just starting to get really interested in it. And that's
Yeah.
fine. Like, I'm happy to facilitate that, and I want to
Yeah.
be involved in it. I want to
Yeah.
be able to help that, like I want to be around. I want to know that. Like I don't want to just come home from work and be like, oh, you're drawing now, like I want to know like he's interested in it. And I have,
Yeah.
my middle is like really interested in he's really interested in Nerf guns, and I want to
Okay,
be able to like,
okay.
yeah, hey,
Okay,
he's a
wherever
boy, right?
that
Like
goes.
whatever.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And then my youngest is just turned 4, so he's
All
kind of
right.
interested in Darth Vader mostly. That's pretty much it.
Wow. Okay, well,
So
that's a lot there too. So see where that goes.
so anyway, like I
Yeah.
just I want to be
Yeah.
involved. I want to continue to, understand my wife, because we are different people now than when we got married. And I want
Yeah.
to understand, my dynamic with the kids. And to a certain extent, I want to kind of reestablish or I don't know, repair, maybe not the right quite word, but my relationship with my parents.
Yeah.
Because there's heaps and heaps of, you know, trauma, maybe definitely some hurt involved there.
Mhm.
And just, a lot of things that they kind of have to like, they have to be willing to unpack, but I'm willing if they are, to sort of thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
S- on that, I mean, you said you're going away to Africa for 6 months, which is a long time. And I know you mentioned that your parents had had sort of like brief stints of going away for a long time.
yeah.
I'd like to know more about that if you want to talk about it, but do you talk to them about, like, would you sort of consult them about going away for a certain amount of time because you know they did that? Or is that, yeah, I don't know, that just because that's a long time.
Yeah, it is. It is a long time, and I've managed to successfully avoid it for the
Avoid it.
majority of
Yeah.
my career. And then I finally was like,
Yeah.
I'm either gonna have to do it this year or next year,
Mm,
and I either have to pick between Africa or Qatar. Those are my
okay.
basically my two choices. And I was like, well, let's just get it out of the way. I'll just do Africa. I'll go to Africa because I'm interested in it. I anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a less populated area, so it's slightly less oversight if you understand what
Okay.
the military oversight kind of thing is. There's a lot more like general officers and or um administrative like red tape at the Qatar base. So I was like, I'll just go to Africa. It'll be more chill. Like I'm more of a laid back kind of guy.
Okay.
I'm happy to just go with the flow and uh kind of vibe with whatever's going on. And so I felt like Africa as a whole would be. I want to go to both places. I've never been to the Middle East, never been to Africa. I'm always down to go somewhere I've never been.
Yeah.
Um, but for 6 months, I was like, I'd rather be somewhere for 6 months where um like everybody is on the same page and like trying to not just get through the 6 months, but like do it in a relaxed way.
Yeah.
Whereas because Qatar is like kind of a headquarters for a lot of stuff going on in the Middle East, they tend to be a little bit more strict isn't the right word, but like they're more worried about minutia. They're more worried about
Mm.
the little tiny details of everyday work and stuff like that. So I was just
Yeah.
like, this would be
More.
more something more Mike Schaefer speed than the Qatar base would. So I opted for that one.
Yeah.
I volunteered my way into going this year instead of next year.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'll be in Djibouti is the country.
Okay.
So it's like spitting distance to Yemen. I'm like across the Red Sea from Yemen
Okay.
basically. Um and I don't know that much about it, to be honest. Like I
Okay.
know generally I know where I'm gonna be at. I know the guy that's there now, and him and I are talking a little bit, and I kind of understand the overall structure of what I'm gonna be doing. SERE is very unique in that when we go overseas on a deployment like this, we don't do as much of the teaching stuff where we teach the SERE piece, but we're here, right? We're in the country, we teach the SERE piece to all the aircrew. When we go overseas to deployments, we get put in charge of the PR architecture. So PR stands for personnel recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially everything from a reporter who gets captured by a terrorist group all the way to like straight up there's a military conflict and we got a pilot shot down and we need to send somebody to pick them up. That is the breadth of PR. Like it covers everything from random American citizens or even allied citizens that are being held hostage
Mm-hmm.
to like conflict to like isolated person. If there's somebody that needs to be picked up for some reason, they require personnel recovery, right? So uh we're obviously more skewed towards the combative side of things, but there hasn't been a America run like or America involved conflict, like actual war in
Mm-hmm.
Africa, really since World War II and like the North African campaign against the Nazis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a lot of the combat portion of PR, but there is a fair amount of random miscreants and like Al-Shabaab terrorist organizations and stuff like that are active in that area. And so we do have personnel recovery for Americans traveling over there, missionaries, journalists, all that stuff. That happens fairly, I would say fairly regularly on like an operational level, like a couple a year, So um, that's part of it.
Yeah.
What I'm going to be doing is managing the pieces of all that and like helping coordinate. I'm not ever. You kind of mentioned like briefly the danger.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Just the
I
level of like like yeah.
my job specifically is very rarely uh, to kick down a door. I am almost never SERE as a career field. There is like a 1 to 2% of the career field that can do that, that can be in those really cool guys positions and cut down or excuse me, kick down the door, like
Mm-hmm.
actually like enter the room like you've seen if you ever watched like the war movie with like special operations teams, right?
Yes, I have
But
seen in
SERE
movies.
SERE in general is not like that. That
Yeah.
is not a general thing that SERE does. We are more focused. We have a lot of stuff in common with those guys as far as like our training and the things that we can offer.
Yeah.
But on the whole, we are more advisory in nature. We have a encyclopedic knowledge of a lot of PR information, and so
Yeah.
they put us in like a I would call it like a brainstem, where they have like a bunch of computer screens that can see a lot of operations happening at the same time, and then we are there to, hey, this plane just crashed. What do we do? You know, SERE guy, what does this person need us to do, or what are we doing with this person? And
So
so
you're experts.
yeah, that's my job. Is like I will
Yeah.
pull up that person's profile and be like, okay, this guy, his emergency plan of action is this, and he's going to be doing this, and this. His understanding of the local area is this. This is what he's going to try to do. He's going to move in this direction. Um, his communication procedures say this. He'll be on radio at the top of the hour for 10 minutes every hour for the first 6 hours, like that kind of stuff. Like that's my job, is to have all that information or be able to pull that information quickly and then allocate that to whoever needs it. So that's kind of what we do, and it's unique in that it's different. A lot of times, if you work on jets here and you turn a wrench and you work on a jet in Dover and you go to Qatar, you're probably just going to turn wrenches on planes there.
Hmm.
Here is we're an instructor and we teach all this stuff, and we're, you know, the SERE specialist for SERE here, and then we go to the deployment and now we're a PR uh, architecture piece, and so it's kind of different and unique and kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I get to do something different. I get to do something there that I've not done in my career really yet, except for
Yeah.
notional training, you know.
Yeah. No, it sounds complicated because it sounds interesting from a work perspective, but
Yeah,
it also sounds difficult from someone who values home perspective.
yeah. And this is one of those things that I was talking about at the very beginning. Like I give up things to get things, you know. Like
Hmm.
there is a trade-off here, because you know there are financial benefits to a deployment. You get you don't pay taxes while you're deployed, and that's like financially
Oh,
that
okay.
is helpful. Like that helps my wife and the kids be fine and stable while I'm gone. And that's like the government's like, yeah, we're taking you away for 6 months, we got to give you something. So they
Yeah.
take taxes out of your pay, and they stop taking taxes out of your pay while you're gone.
Huh. I didn't
And
know that.
so there's like that's like a small little like financial benefit, and I get like something called family separation pay while I'm gone. So financially, we will be doing better while I'm gone.
Yeah, you're like incentivized. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't say incentivized. It's not
Well,
enough. Like, the money
hmm.
isn't big enough that I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah,
Woo!
let me get this
I,
deployment money, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But it takes the worry out of it for me.
Hmm.
I when I'm gone, I know that Emily and the kids can have like an extra night out or 2 nights out a week where they get takeout or they get whatever. They go to a restaurant or travel to see, you know, Mama and Papa up in West Virginia, like all that stuff. Like they have all that availability to them without having a financial burden associated with it, because we're getting paid more while I'm gone. Like they're compensating me for being gone by making sure my family is taken care of. And that worry piece, the concern piece
Yeah,
is a big part of that.
yeah,
A lot of the people that struggle with these kinds of deployments or these trips for the military is because finances aren't great and they're worried about something happening back home, or it's causing actual problems back home, and you
yeah,
have like people that are getting divorced over finances and stuff. So
yeah,
thankfully, that's not going to be an issue for us. So
yeah. Which is good.
yeah.
I have a couple of other questions for you.
Sure.
I just wanted to touch on your mom for a second, if you wanted to talk about it,
Sure.
only because I don't know a lot of people. Also, I'm Canadian, so I have a very different relationship to the mil. The only people that I know who are in the military are American, and they're men, and they're old. And so
Okay.
that's like my relationship to the military. I
Sure.
truly have never actually, I don't know a lot of women that have been in the military.
Yeah.
Um, my the longest amount of time I thought about it was my mom dated a guy when I was younger who worked for the Canadian, something related, and he tried to convince me to apply for CSIS
Okay.
for an amount of time. And I
Yeah.
was like, that's crazy. Have you
Yeah.
ever met me?
Yeah.
And that was like a section of my life where I thought about that, but that's the complete aside. But so all to say, yeah, I just you kind of described your dad's way of being, and in some ways that's like not surprising for when he grew up and a
Yeah.
background like you described. So did your mom, I'm just curious about your mom's background, like
Yeah,
in
sure.
how different it is.
They had very different upbringings. My mom, I would say, was a military child. So, and I'll say this too because it keeps popping into my head. In the best way possible, you have a lot of striking, like there are some, not like a lot of personality similarities, but some personality similarities, but mostly physically. Like you kind of remind me of my mom in certain aspects. She
Okay.
had red hair and she was very tall and
Okay.
she's very like social. So like
Okay. There you go. Then
but
that's how,
like
yeah.
there are some minor things there that kind of make me laugh. Like internally, like I'm just like,
That was how, and that's how that was
chuckling.
our, yeah.
Yeah. So but yeah, so she grew up in the military. Her dad was a chaplain. So that's like the religious affairs officer, basically.
Okay.
He is Protestant Christian, but part of being a chaplain is you're not like he is a Protestant Christian minister. He is ordained as a minister. He continued teaching sermons and messages and stuff like at churches after he retired. So like that is his background. However, when you're in the Air Force or in the military as a chaplain, your job isn't to be a Protestant Christian pastor. Your job is to administer to the um, psychological and religious needs of the entire military. So like there are Protestant, there are Catholic, there are Muslim, there are Hindu uh, chaplains, and all the position requires of you is that you have some form of faith, and you are willing to um, be um psychological feels like the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Like your job is to administer psychological and spiritual
Spiritual
like
like
aid,
guidance. Yeah.
yeah, guidance to the military, right? So, um, yeah, there's all kinds of different chaplains. I would say the majority of them are Catholic Christian or Protestant Christian. That's kind of the majority, but I have encountered both a Muslim and a Sikh or Hindu. I can't remember. But yeah, one of those two chaplains as well.
Wow. Okay.
So like they exist, and it is an open kind of invitation into that world if you have some form of faith, right? So my grandfather was my Pap Pap
Pap
was a
pap.
chaplain, yeah,
Yeah.
and he did that for like 20, 30 years. And so she grew up moving around. She lived in Pennsylvania, Texas, Japan, uh, somewhere else. I can't remember. She lived in like 5 or 6 places. And then she joined like out of college as well. And she went into intelligence. So she worked in a vault as well. But intelligence is like it's so broad reaching, it's kind of insane. So she had to like everything from like how our airplanes work to what enemy airplanes exist to what's the biggest threat right now to hey, here's where you're going, here's some information about the country you're going to, like everything that you can think of as like valuable information probably has something to do with intelligence at some point. So she sat in a vault and like analyzes all this info and distributes it to who needs it
Who needs it? Yeah.
out of the military, right? So um she did that for 17 years and then she retired. um to be honest, I don't know if she wanted to retire. They kind of, her and my dad kind of arrived at like, one of us needs to retire because the kids are getting old enough that somebody needs to be with
To
the
be there.
kids.
Yeah.
Um, and which is ironic because a lot of people are the opposite. They try to be available when the kids are
Are
young, and then
young. Yes,
when the kids get
totally.
when the kids get older, they go back to work. But that
Yeah.
was that was kind I don't know. So she retired early. She took an early retirement, in North Carolina, and she retired at like 17 years. Normally, you have to make it to 20 for retirement, but the Air Force offered her an early retirement
Yeah.
package, and so she retired. And then um, because she's so energetic and used to that lifestyle and
Yeah.
social, she really didn't enjoy being just a stay-at-home mom, so she decided to become a massage therapist. And
Oh,
so
wow.
she did that for the last 15, 20 years, and then now she just works at Home Depot and
Wow.
like stays near, she lives up in PA now near her parents to help take care of them because they're getting old. They're like 96 and 94
Oh,
respectively.
and those are your
That's my
great
Pap Pap and my
grandparents.
Grammy. Yeah, those
Holy
are her parents.
her parents. Yeah, your grandparents. Yeah. Holy
Yeah.
wow, that's great.
Yeah. So they're
Holy
old, but they're
wow. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
they're they're preserving themselves with the amount of
Sure.
wine they drink every day, and
Keeping it. That's
that's
right.
right.
That's the kind of
Keep
old
it
age
100,
I'm
man.
looking for.
That's
Yeah.
right. So they're just chilling. They're doing old people retired things. They just moved into a retirement community, and
Huh.
she lives like 30 minutes from them, so they, she can help if they need stuff.
Does she have does she or did you get a particular kind of I don't know, counsel from her in terms of your career? Like, does she have a perspective that's different than your dad's?
You know, I don't really know because she got out. I was 9 or 8. I was
Okay.
8 when she retired. So I really do not remember her as a professional military member.
Mhm.
I remember that 6 months that she was gone. I remember like random little like snippets of my time with my dad from that period. Like I have this very vivid memory of he was making spaghetti for us for dinner,
Mhm.
and I could not see over the stove. I was like, if you stood me by the stove, I would like my eyes were at the stove top level.
Mhm.
And he put this pot of water and noodles on the stove. And then my brother or my sister, I don't know which one of them, but somebody needed something. And so he runs out of the room and he goes, Mike, watch the pot. And I was like, okay, I'm 8. I don't know what that means. I just
Yeah,
was like,
yeah, like
so I just stood
yeah.
there and I watched it. I just watched the pot. And then like a couple minutes went by and he hadn't come back yet. And so I'm watching the pot and watching the pot. And all of a sudden smoke starts coming out of the pot. And I was like, Dad. So I like ran and got him. And like, turns out that it had boiled. It had been so long, the water had all boiled out of the pot and it was just burning the noodles into the pot. And he was like, what the heck? And I was like, you told me to watch it. I watched it. Now and then it started smoking and I came and got you. Like that is a vivid memory I have
Yeah.
from that time frame, but I don't remember very much else about like the day to day because
Hmm.
I was so young. And then she got out. And so I don't really have a lot of memories of her as a military member, which I would say is what shaped me. That's more of what shaped me with my regard to my dad than like his opinion. Because remember, his opinion was, I don't
Not
think you should do the military.
yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted to, like, honestly, if he had been more supportive, I probably would have gone into an ROTC program. Like I
What is
probably
that?
would have gone reserve officer training course. So at colleges, a lot of colleges have a program where you will essentially you play Army or you play Air Force for the entirety of your time there. You like have a uniform, and on weekends, you guys you'll get up and you'll practice marching, or you'll go to a week. It's basically like a summer camp, a military summer camp. You go to like a 2 week long military summer camp. They call field training, and you like
Hmm.
play military essentially for and then you do college and you have PT sessions as a group and all that stuff. And at the end of the 4 years, when you get your degree, you commission. They usually will give you either a scholarship or some form of tuition assistance while you're in the ROTC program, and that is in exchange for you agreeing to sign this contract saying I will join the Air Force as an officer for, you know, 4, 6, 10 years, however long, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
Pilots have to sign a 10-year contract because their training is very extensive and very expensive, and the Air Force wants to recoup that
Make sure.
investment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they get a massive bonus. They get like a couple $100,000 over the course of their career, extra over like an intel officer, for example. However, the intel officer can sign a 4-year contract. The
So you're
pilot,
bound.
yeah, the
Yeah.
pilot is locked for 10, you know. So um like that's the kind of difference. And so like I would have done a program at college where I was in ROTC, I get a degree in whatever I decide, but at the end of it I would be for sure going in. Um but he was so against me joining the military that I was like, all right, well, shoot, I'll try this civilian style stuff, even though I kind of wanted to be a pilot, right? So that was kind of my like, I don't know, my trajectory was like leaning that way, and he
Yeah.
was like, don't do that, and I was like, all right, fine. So I didn't, and then now I didn't finish my degree because I was doing something I didn't care about, and I wasn't in an ROTC program, so I don't have the option to do piloting because you have to have your bachelor's for that.
Hmm.
Um, and so I was like, okay, cool. Well, my only other options are enlisting. And so I picked, SERE became the pick because my dad did that 3 year stint as an ALO where he was calling in airstrikes. That's cool. That's like, there's like a selection involved in that job. They have to go to jump school. You have to go to jump out of airplanes. Um, and so I was like, I want to do something cool. And so I kind of did research. There's like 6 jobs in the Air Force that are like the cool jobs.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
SEER, EOD, which is the bomb squad kind of
Okay.
thing. Pararescue, who are like, if you are getting picked up in personnel recovery, they are most likely the Air Force person that's going to come pick you up. Uh,
Is that a
Tactic,
paratrooper?
kind of. You can be a paratrooper and not be a pararescueman.
Okay.
So paratroopers are just anybody that comes into any situation under parachute. If
Okay.
I'm in the army and I jump out to go take, we're like think like the invasion of Normandy, right? And they're dropping guys out of a plane on parachutes. Those are paratroopers. Um, Pararescue is a specific job in the Air Force. It stands for Pararescueman Jumper, PJ basically.
Hmm.
Um, they are the highest trained personnel recovery person in the DoD. They're medic trained as well, and so a lot of people kind of pair them up with like a medic kind of mentality, but their focus, their expertise is in personnel recovery. So no matter where you are, you could be on a cliff top somewhere and they have to like high angle evac you down with ropes and pulleys, or that you could be in the middle of the ocean and they have to like jump into the water and pull a Zodiac over to you and swim you to shore, like whatever, like any
So
any
they're like
situation.
expert rescuers from
Correct.
any kind of,
Any
okay.
situation. Yep.
Huh.
And they can do it from high altitude. They can do it from underwater. They can do it from ground convoys. So that's what PJs are.
Okay.
You have combat controllers who are they're designed to like take down and create airfields. Like if you're with a team somewhere and you need a resupply and there's no airport or no airfield, these
Oh,
guys
they
can find
create.
they can
Okay.
find a big flat area. They'll survey it quick. They'll help take it down, and then they can, boom, we can drop a C-130 on this strip of land real quick.
Hmm.
You have TAC-P, which is like the enlisted version of what my dad did. They call in airstrikes specifically for ground units, and they get attached to those ground units that need the airstrikes. And then the last one is special reconnaissance. So they're like, if you think recon, like troops that like go out and try to get reconnaissance information, that's what they do.
Hmm.
So those are the 6 jobs. And I was like, oh, cool. Let me look at these 6 jobs because these are really the only things that I really wanted to do aside from linguist. There's another job called cryptologic linguist where you learn a language and like you fly around on an airplane all the time and just interpret information, or you go be attached to a unit and you help them with language translations. And so
Huh.
languages have always fascinated me. I've
Yeah.
studied Spanish, I've studied Italian, and I thought that that was something else that I'd be interested in doing. But I got my SERE contract before I got a linguist contract. So I said, cool, I'll do SERE.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so those are the 6. And I was kind of torn. The whole PR world kind of interested me. And I was deciding between PJ and SERE.
Hmm.
And I was not sure which one I wanted to do. And Emily, kind of from the background, was like, hey, I'll support you no matter what you do. But if you could pick the more family friendly of the two,
Yeah.
I won't be mad at you. And I was like, okay, cool. And the PJ career field has a very, very high deployment ops tempo. I'm talking, you're going to be gone 150 to 180 days a year for the first
Oh.
4 years of your career,
Uh-huh.
guaranteed.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
also a longer pipeline. You're in training in PJ world for 2.5 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of training. So that is the gist of
Yeah.
that. But that was the motivation, was because dad did something cool. I'm joining. I want to do something cool. Um, and I picked the most family friendly of the cool jobs, in my opinion. So
Yeah. So one thing that I assumed about you, the only thing that I assumed about you when I met you,
okay.
which was like my thing, which is why I asked you to do an interview with me, like on the dance floor. I was like, oh, this guy is open. You seemed like genuinely open as a person,
Yeah.
and you seemed genuinely interested as a person. And maybe those two things go together, not always, but you seemed like interested in the world around you in a very basic way, which is maybe
Yes.
why we were able to have a conversation together.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that I really value and I really think is it's like it's just a I don't know if it's a personality trait. I don't even know what you call that, but that was like the one thing that and then I was like, hope I was right about that when we talked to each other. And I think that I was, and that's
Yeah.
really like cool to me. So I
Yeah.
guess very ramble, all to say like, what do you value? Or like, what are
Yeah.
the things? Yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
Um, I think that's an interesting question, because it can be a lot of sorry, I'm messing with I have a uh one thing I value is Lego. I built the Lego Rivendell set. I got that for myself. That was like my long time, like I was saving up, 50 bucks here, 100 bucks there, kind of thing, and finally bought it and built it. So
Cool.
I knocked a piece off when I was I was gesturing earlier, and I bumped it because I keep it right above me on my desk. Um,
Okay, Lego, number one.
yeah, nah, not number
Yeah.
one, but it's definitely something. I just kept
Yeah.
I knocked the piece off, so I couldn't ignore it. Yeah, so um, I guess in general, it would be. I don't know that I have like a hierarchy. I would say in general, I tend to be fairly, um, man, I could have answered this question 10 minutes ago without thinking about it, like just talking. But now that I'm actually trying to
Yeah.
like verbalize it or vocalize it, it's a little
Yeah.
more difficult. Um,
There's no right answer. You can
yeah, no,
really
I
just
know. I
whatever.
understand.
Yeah.
I get you. I get you.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
worries. I would say in general, I probably would say the first thing that I value is my family. And um, I mean specifically with regard to that is my immediate family, my three children and my wife.
Mm.
Um, Everybody else is secondary or tertiary to that. That is my primary focus. I want my kids to be protected. I want them to be healthy, and um I want them to grow up in a way that um I want them to be supported is what I'm trying to get at, I guess. Um, my parents weren't ever like down on me, uh, but there was just a lot of when they would express a opinion about something, it was oftentimes like, well, have you considered this negative outcome to whatever it is you're talking about? And they wanted to make sure that I didn't ever regret something. And I can see that in hindsight now. And like, I get it. But at the same time, like, there's better ways than the way I was raised to go about that, I think. And I'm trying to implement that with my family.
Yeah.
Um, my faith is important to me, but it's not a defining like characteristic in how I interact with the world. Or it kind of is, but it isn't. It's not, it's more about, it's not a defining characteristic in who I interact with,
Hmm.
but it is a kind of that openness, that positivity that you kind of felt at the wedding. I feel like a lot of that is rooted in that. Um, Plus I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert anyway,
Hmm.
um, which you can appreciate.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if Josh would
No,
fall
no,
into this
Josh,
category.
Josh is on a different, Josh is
But
a
that's how it
different
works.
category. Yeah, it's that's out of
You
we're
match
different
with your
people.
opposite. My wife is a
Exactly.
super big introvert. So
Totally.
her and Josh could both sit in a room together and not say a
Yeah,
word to each other for an
exactly. And
entire
be like,
day and they would be chill. It would be
yeah,
fine. Right.
100%, 100%. And
So
that's life, right? It's the balance.
yeah, exactly. So I would say in general, like those are the two things that are like very important to me. And then other things that I'd say I value, I'll go kind of like off the cuff as things occur to me here. But
Yeah.
like I I am not a I'm not a conservative politically, and I'm not a liberal politically. And I personally I don't really like to say that I'm a libertarian because the Libertarian Party is kind of a joke.
Hmm.
Um, but I agree with the ideals of the party. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
I don't think the government should be involved in anything. I think that they
Hmm.
are horribly inefficient at
Hmm.
everything that they do.
Hmm.
And I think that if I've been in the military long enough, I can speak to this like from a
Hmm.
personal experience. Like
Hmm.
the military will pay $5,000 for a Ziploc bag this size of metal bushings that you could buy for $25 from Harbor Freight. Like that's the kind of stuff that happens in the government because you get these contracts that get it put into place where a company will say like, well, we're going to make these special bushings for you and they're going to cost, whatever extra amount of money.
Hmm.
So that kind of happens a lot. So
Hmm.
I just and I just don't think that any program built by the government has ever been as efficient as something that somebody who actually knows that's their expertise and they build
Hmm.
the program. It's always better
Hmm.
every time. Doesn't necessarily, it can be a public sector thing, but it shouldn't be especially the federal government. Our country is too big and too diverse and too um and by diverse I mean like regionally.
Hmm.
What we do on the East Coast looks very different from what people in Kansas are doing, which also looks very different from both of those things on the West Coast. So
Hmm.
like the federal government just cannot regulate that sort of stuff. So I value a smaller federal government. And if you want to have bigger state governments, that makes sense to me. I'm not opposed to that. Like
Hmm.
if you want to have a completely state run medical program and have state medical stuff given for free, cool. That's something that your state might value. And like if that's something that you guys value, you should find a way to make that work.
Hmm.
And those are your neighbors anyway, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like those people you're going to have way more in common with the people in uh you know just outside the city of New York from a like economical standpoint than somebody in like LA, right?
Hmm.
Their climate is different, their resources are different. Everything about what they're doing is different from you in New York. They may have similar political leanings, but actually socioeconomically and like the circumstances that you are dealing with are much more similar to your people in the same state as you uh than people across the country who might share the similar political views to you. That's my
Hmm.
opinion. Same thing for the
Hmm.
right wing. You can go both directions. So
Hmm.
I think that's something that I value. I value literacy. That is a big thing for me
Hmm.
that I think is kind of like a weird thing to talk about. Like, because people are like, well, everybody can read, but
No.
not really, actually.
Yeah.
I've run across a couple of young
Yeah.
airmen who like I've sent some like so a lot of what the military does is we send these things called MFRs and they're memorandum it's called a memorandum for record. And like if I want to do something, if I want to go to a course, like go travel for a course, or if I want to implement this change to something that we're doing, you submit an MFR. And uh, all it is like an official document. You type up what you want to say and you send it to a person. You have them like proofread it and stuff. And then you can send it kind of wherever you want in your chain of command to try and implement this change or get this
Hmm.
course or whatever. And I've had young airmen who I sent an MFR to who are like, I don't understand half the words in this thing. And I'm like, what do you
Really?
mean? Yeah, yeah. And it's like, it's not a common thing, but
Yeah.
it is a thing. Like, I'm like, what do you mean you don't understand the words? Like, do you not know, like, how did you can't
Get
read the word?
here.
You don't
Yeah.
understand it? Like, but like literacy as a whole thing is like, um, it's just not, it's not something that we should take for granted because it's not It's
Yeah.
not a universal thing right now. And I don't know, it's very important. I am such a big reader, that it if yeah, it's very valuable to me, and it's something that um I will instill in my children. They all, like, my 8-year-old can already read really, really well. And my 6-year-old is on the track to do that. And my 4-year-old is, starting with the and little like 3-letter words,
Yeah.
Um, but
And
yeah, so that's
I'll
something that's
also
important to me.
I will just also say that without going into any of it, just because you put them next to each other, if you are someone who believes in a political ideology or societal ideology where power is more in the hands of people to structure their worlds for themselves versus like a larger organizing governmental
Sure.
force, then it's very important that people be able to read and be
Yeah.
literate
Oh,
in order
100%.
to be able to make those choices. So I think
Yes.
that
Agreed.
just the fact that you put them next to each other
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
And additionally, it allows you, without having to, like, you in New York can be exposed to the same, like, breadth of ideology as somebody in Texas, even though you live in completely separate geopolitical spheres and socioeconomic spheres, or physical geographic spheres, right? Those are all things that you are very different in, but you can be exposed to the same ideas via reading
Yeah.
and via, like, books
Critical
and
and
just,
critical thinking
yeah,
skills that would enable you
yeah.
to like process the information. Yes. Okay, you
And
continue. Makes no
and
sense.
then, kind of on that same vein, like, this is more of like a personal, like, um I guess, philosophy, or point of view, but I think vocabulary is incredibly important.
Hmm. Hmm.
And not like in a pretentious way, but just like, and this might tie into why I thought, like, I would be a good linguist. Like, linguistically, it is so interesting to come up with different ways to describe something. Like, have you watched the Dead Poets Society with Robin
Yeah.
Williams?
Of
Like,
course.
that movie, for whatever it is, back in the 90s or 80s, 90s, when it was made,
Yeah.
like, that movie has some really good points. Like, why would you describe yourself as happy when there are so much more, like, descriptive and, like, exciting words to use? Why would you settle for saying, "Oh, I feel okay," when I could say so many other words that I could not only, like, be more expressive with, I can actually narrow it down to a much more direct and specific feeling that way, than just saying, "Oh, I'm happy." Okay, are you moderately happy? Are you vivaciously, like, excited? Like, that kind of stuff. Like, that, to me, it's not like, I don't ever think it should be a, because this is the thing that I see a lot whenever people start talking about, you being verbose, like using lots of,
Hmm.
like vocabulary. It tends to come down to a place where people feel like they are less intelligent because they
Hmm.
may or may not understand the words you're using. And so it kind of goes two ways. The people that, if you don't understand a word, or you don't know what a word means, people don't like to appear to not
Hmm.
know what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
So they don't want to ask, "What does that word mean? I'm not familiar with it." They feel like they lose,
Status or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, like, they lose their footing in the
Ego.
conversation.
Hmm.
And I don't think that, I think that's a very poor way of looking at that, number one.
Hmm.
And then number two is, the other side of that token is, people try to use it as a status symbol, and
Hmm.
they try to use it to intimidate
Yeah.
or whatever. And then you have, like, this crazy awful cycle where you're like, okay, if this person starts using this, highfalutin, crazy idiomatic language, they are trying to talk down to me, and I'm going to push back
Yeah.
against them, and insult them, or not be interested in what they're saying.
Yeah.
And then, conversely, you have people that are like, well, this person doesn't know what this word means. They don't know what the word gregarious means. So
Hmm.
obviously they are inferior to me,
Hmm.
intellectually. And I just hate that.
Mhm.
I because I probably because I read so much, like I love words. Like I
Mhm.
used to my best, like hands down, one of my best subjects in school was we did AP English class my 11th grade year where we did a vocab quiz every single week. And I ate that shit up. Like was I was obsessed and I loved it. And I get on the thesaurus all the time and like try to find funnier new ways to say things. Like my signature block on my
Yeah,
email.
buoyantly.
Yeah. I was
I
like,
love that.
I was like, I was just sitting there and I was like looking for ways to put like happily or cheerfully. And I was telling you in one of the emails, I was like, I almost used jubilantly. And I was like, oh, that's such a positive like
Hmm.
thing. And then I was like, kind of just, well, let me look for a couple more synonyms. And I found buoyantly. And I was like, all right, that is the same thing. And I also have been to dive school and I love swimming. So I'm going with this one. And that was what I opted for. And it just like, to me, like it within that one little word, I am one expressing a positive emotion and a feeling of excitement to be like speaking to whoever I'm talking to. And I can laugh at myself because there's a pun in there because
Hmm.
I am buoyant. You know what I mean? Like I swim. So like to me, language is such an interesting tool and it's such a overlooked part of society. Um, that I don't know. I unconsciously find myself caring about it. Because I just, I grew up reading everything, and part of that stemmed from the stuff going on at home. It was
Hmm.
like my escape. But like I just remember like I grew up reading Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, um, the Goosebumps books,
Oh yeah.
all that stuff. Like I was big into just about anything that I could get my hands on that wasn't like um really like I couldn't I stayed away from like really fringe topics or
Hmm.
like really like age appropriate stuff
Yeah.
that adults can read now and I could read now and wouldn't be phased by, but like if I was 12 reading it, it would have completely destroyed my whole world. You know what I mean? Like that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's so much to be gained from it. It's so important to have, and I think that honestly, um, that sort of mentality of being open to and being able to express yourself allows you to have that. Because, like, I would say in general, like from a friend group perspective, you and I might not have that many friends in common.
Yeah.
Just like based on who we hang out with and like
Yeah.
what's important to us or what we are familiar with even.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
For sure.
but where I come from and what I'm comprised of or what I'm made up of is like what allowed us to just have a
Yeah.
fun time at the wedding and like build a quick
Friendship.
interpersonal connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. Um, I think that's I think that's something I value. I also value the ability to um like help other people, like be willing to help somebody. And I think that that's something that kind of gets brushed over a lot, and it's not something. And I'm not just me. I don't mean like be willing to help, uh, like your uh, your brother or your sister or your friend, but like I have a neighbor, and like if he needs help with something, like I should be willing to help him with that. Like he's digging a trench to put in a drain or something like that, or he's putting up a fence. Like I'm not gonna kill myself
Mhm.
to help that, but I should be willing to put in at least a little bit of time to be able to help the people that are around me. You know what I mean? Regardless of if um, if it's something that's going to directly benefit me.
Mhm.
I think that's something that is it's not necessarily lost, but it's also not at the forefront of society at the moment.
Mhm.
It's very everything's kind of transactional. Am
Mhm.
I getting something out of this? If so, cool, I'll do it. But if there's not a transactional piece to it, I'm not as interested. And I think that there's something that's lost there in the community aspect or like the building relationship aspect. And I think things like, COVID forcing everybody inside kind of magnified that a little bit and kind of hamstrung that. I mean, we saw like what was happening with kids at like not being able to go to school and socialize,
Mhm.
like that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And I think that kind of ties into it, but it's specifically the ability or the penchant towards like uh somebody needs help, I should help that person. Um it kind of humanizes the rest of the world to us, I think, and it helps us see outside of the tribalism that I think is um, uh, kind of, kind of like handicapping our culture. I
Mhm.
think it's too
Mhm.
tribal. Um, Everybody lives in an echo chamber where they only hear the same things as each
Mhm.
other, or as their, all your friends say the same things. Um, all the time,
Mhm.
and you guys don't agree, and now you can't be friends because you don't agree about you know the big
X.
orange man. You don't agree about the
Mhm.
big orange man in the White House, or you don't agree about your buddy has a different stance than you on the death penalty, and then therefore you're not friends anymore.
Mhm.
Like that to me is bonkers. That is insanity to me that you can't exist in a world where somebody has a difference of opinion
Different.
to you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that is very that just kind of stumbled into that one. Like being able to have a conversation is like, or a disagreement socially and like civilly is
Mhm.
incredibly important to me. And I catch myself doing it sometimes, but then I'm always able to be like, okay, I'm a little unhinged right now. I need to step away, and then I can come back later when I'm not feeling so raw or so emotional about this.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's a core problem. And you know, to bring all of this full circle, I think the very basic reason why you and I were able to have this conversation, and I think really what I would like to say is thank you for that, for talking
Yeah,
to me, um, is because there's an aspect of my personality and of your personality, and I think of our shared values that like meets there, it
yeah,
like in this space. And I
right.
think that I have like no answers. I have no idea what the future holds. I got nothing. But
You're along for the ride.
yeah, I'm along for the ride, like all of us, right?
Yeah,
Like that's it. I'm just like all of everyone else. But I like what I love the most is just the fact that like we could have this conversation. And there's like so much in what we've talked about.
yeah.
There's so much here. Um, And I'm like truly thankful that you trusted me because I think a lot of this has to do with just being able to like trust each other
Sure.
in and I think we that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah,
Uh so I feel very thankful that I got to like learn about you. I got to learn about so much that I did not know, never thought about, can't
sure.
imagine like being in your shoes and like just to totally I feel very grateful to like hear your story and learn about you and that like we can yeah, just to talk. So yeah, I I value this, which is why I'm doing this project and I'm
Sure.
just like super happy that you agreed to be a part of it and like showed up the way you did. I'm like, yeah, truly, truly like jazzed about that.
I don't know. Like the biggest thing to me with anything like this is always just being like, why? Ask why. And nobody cares to ask why anymore. And so I always try to do that. And, if you don't agree with somebody, why do you feel that way? If you don't
Mm.
understand something, well, tell me more about that. Why do you feel that way? And I feel like you said you and I both have the ability to do that. And I think that kind of is, uh, it's not necessarily readily apparent when you meet somebody, but it does kind of manifest rather quickly
It
in a
does. It's
in a
shocking.
conversation. If because you can't help it. Like
Yeah.
anytime you're in a conversation, like you can't help but manifest minor like little ticks of your values, and the curiosity piece of that is what
Yeah, that's
clues
what
you
it
in.
is. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so like I don't know, I just yeah, I enjoy that about myself, and I enjoy that about other people, and I think that that's something that you manifest. So
Yeah. Straight up. And that's why you were at the wedding as well, right?
that's right.
Like if
Hey,
you and Dave weren't curious about each other, you wouldn't have been there. So
exactly.
there's
Facts.
this,
Yeah,
yeah.
he wouldn't have spent a weekend at my house going to
No.
an arena in Georgia.
Yeah, man. That's how it works.